The transport shuttle shook as it approached Station Nexus 7. Daewon pressed his face against the small window and watched the massive structure grow larger. The station looked like a wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Lights blinked along its surface like stars that had been captured and put in rows. He had been traveling for 3 weeks to get here. His old supervisor on Earth told him this would be a good opportunity. A chance to work with alien species he had only seen in textbooks. Daewon had always been good with animals. The scared ones, the hurt ones, the ones that everyone else had given up on. Maybe he could do the same work here, just with creatures from other worlds. The shuttle docked with a heavy clang. Daewon grabbed his worn bag and the small terrarium he had carried the entire journey. Inside was a small lizard he had rescued back on Earth. It had been hurt, abandoned. Now it was healthy and calm. He would release it into the station's garden habitat later. The airlock door opened with a hiss. Daewon stepped into Station Nexus 7 for the first time. The corridor was huge. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. Aliens walked past him in every direction. Some had 4 arms. Some had scales. One looked like it was made entirely of blue crystal. Another floated past without any legs at all. Daewon tried not to stare, but everything was so new. A tall figure approached him. It had the body of an insect, but it stood upright like a human. Its face had too many eyes, and its mouth moved in a way that made Daewon uncomfortable. "You are the new xenobiologist," the creature said. Its voice was sharp and clicking. "I am Hana, the station administrator. Follow me." Daewon followed. Hana walked quickly through the corridors, pointing at different sections without much emotion. The medical bay, the research labs, the living quarters, the cafeteria where dozens of species ate dozens of different foods. Everything was clean and organized and overwhelmingly large. "We have a situation," Hana said as they walked. "It is unfortunate timing, but you should know about it." "What kind of situation?" Daewon asked. 3 cubs, Vilcran species, last of their kind. Their planet collapsed 2 months ago. We rescued them and brought them here." Hana's many eyes blinked in a pattern that might have been sadness. "They are dying." They stopped at a large window. Behind it was a habitat room filled with soft bedding and climbing structures. In the far corner, 3 small creatures huddled together. They were about the size of house cats, with 6 legs and fur that shimmered between gray and silver. Their eyes glowed softly in the dim light. "They are beautiful," Daewon said quietly. "They are terrified," Hana replied. "Every time anyone approaches, they panic. They will not eat. They will not sleep properly. We have tried everything. Our best veterinarians, our best animal behavior specialists. Nothing works. The cubs just scream and shake." As if to prove her point, another alien approached the habitat. This one was aquatic-looking, with smooth blue skin and large black eyes. The moment the alien stepped close to the window, the cubs began making a sound that made Daewon's chest hurt. It was high-pitched and desperate. The cubs pressed themselves harder into the corner, their small bodies trembling violently. The blue alien moved away quickly. The sound stopped, but the cubs continued to shake. "That is Bora, our head veterinarian," Hana explained. "She has tried for 2 weeks. Same result every time." "How long do they have?" Daewon asked. 3 days, maybe 4. "The stress is killing them." Hana turned away from the window. "There is a council meeting tonight. They will vote on euthanasia, a mercy killing. It may be the kindest option." Daewon felt something heavy settle in his chest. 3 cubs, the last of their entire species. And they would die simply because they were too afraid to let anyone help them. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Daewon was shown to his quarters, which were small but comfortable. He unpacked his few belongings and released his lizard into the garden habitat as planned. The little creature scurried away into the plants, finally free. That evening he attended the council meeting. He sat in the back and said nothing. 20 different aliens argued about the cubs. Some wanted to keep trying. Others said it was hopeless. One representative, whose species Daewon could not identify, suggested that perhaps the cubs were too damaged by their planet's destruction to ever recover. "Sometimes," the representative said, "the kindest thing is to let go." The vote would happen tomorrow. Daewon could see which way it would go. Most of the council members looked tired. They had tried everything. What else could they do? After the meeting ended, Daewon walked through the quiet corridors. Most of the station was sleeping now, or doing whatever their species did during rest cycles. He found himself walking without a destination, just thinking. Then he realized where his feet had taken him. He stood outside the cubs' habitat section. The lights were dimmed for night cycle. Through the reinforced glass, he could see the three small shapes huddled together in the corner. Daewon moved closer to the window. He did not try to go inside. He just stood there watching. The cubs were not sleeping. Their eyes were open, glowing softly in the darkness. They looked exhausted, scared, lost. Something about them reminded Daewon of cats back on Earth. The way they held themselves. The way their ears moved slightly, listening to every sound. He had grown up with cats. He understood their language of patience and space. He stood there for a long time, not moving, not making noise, just present. Slowly, very slowly, the smallest cub lifted its head. Its glowing eyes found Daewon through the glass. For a moment, neither of them moved. The cub's ears, which had been pressed flat against its head, relaxed slightly. The shaking that had been constant in its small body began to ease. Daewon held very still. He did not smile or move closer. He just stood there, breathing slowly, letting the cub see that he was not a threat. The smallest cub took one small step toward the glass. Then another. It was still cautious, but it was moving toward him instead of away. That had not happened with anyone else. The other two cubs watched. They did not move yet, but they were watching. Daewon stayed at that window until the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the corridors. His legs ached from standing so long. His eyes burned with tiredness. But something had happened in those quiet hours. The smallest cub now sat pressed against the glass on its side. Not hiding, not shaking, just sitting there, as close to Daewon as the barrier would allow. When morning crew started arriving for their shifts, they found the human standing at the observation window. And they found something else too. For the first time since arriving at the station, the Velcrin cubs were calm. No one could explain why. By the time Daewon returned to the cubs' observation window that evening, everyone on the station had heard the news. The human had done something. The cubs had responded. No one understood how or why, but the monitoring systems had recorded everything. Daewon had spent the day in meetings he did not want to attend. Scientists asked him questions he could not answer. What did he do? Nothing special. What was his technique? He had no technique. Did he have special training? Just years of working with scared animals back on Earth. Now he stood at the window again, hoping for the same quiet moment from the night before. The smallest cub was already waiting. When it saw him, it made a sound. Not the terrified screaming from before. This was different, softer, almost like a chirp. Fascinating, a voice said behind him. Daewon turned. A tall reptilian creature stood there, her forearms crossed in what might have been curiosity. She had scales that shifted colors in the light and eyes that looked ancient and intelligent. I am Dr. Yuna Kim, she said, head of xenobiology. I watched the footage from last night, multiple times. I did not do anything special, Daewon said. He had repeated this sentence at least 20 times today. That is what makes it so interesting, Yuna replied. She moved closer to the window and immediately all three cubs tensed. They did not scream, but they moved back into their corner. Yuna noticed and stepped away again. They react to me the same way they react to everyone. Everyone except you. The smallest cub, seeing Yuna back away, crept forward again toward Daewon. I need your help, Yuna said. We have less than 3 days before the council votes. I want to run a proper experiment, scientific, controlled. Can you help us? Daewon looked at the cubs. They were still so thin, still so scared. Will it hurt them? No. I just want to document what happens when different species approach them. And what happens when you approach them. We need to understand this, Daewon agreed. Not because he wanted to be part of an experiment, but because maybe if they understood it, they could save the cubs. The next morning, the experiment began. They cleared the corridor outside the cubs' habitat. Monitoring equipment was set up. Cameras from every angle, audio sensors, even smell detectors to analyze if pheromones played a role. Representatives from different species lined up. One by one, they would approach the habitat, while researchers recorded the cubs' reactions. First came Tai Min, the security chief. He was made of some kind of living crystal, his body reflecting light in sharp angles. The moment he stepped within 3 meters of the habitat, the cubs began their distress calls. The sound made the monitoring equipment spike. Taemin backed away quickly. Next was Bora, the veterinarian. Same result. The cubs screamed and pressed themselves into the corner, their small bodies rigid with fear. An insectoid engineer tried. A floating gas-based scientist tried. A furry trader from a distant world tried. Every single species on the station took a turn. Every single time the cubs reacted with terror. Then it was Daewon's turn. The corridor went quiet as he approached. Scientists leaned forward, watching screens and readings. Daewon felt awkward with so many eyes on him, but he tried to ignore them. He focused only on the cubs. He walked slowly to the window. He did not speak. He did not rush. He just moved closer and then stopped. The cubs watched him. Their ears were up. Their eyes were bright, but they were not shaking. Then, as everyone watched in silence, all 3 cubs stood. They walked toward the glass. Not running, not cautious, just walking like they had been waiting for him. The smallest cub pressed its face against the glass. It made that chirping sound again. The other 2 sat nearby, their tails moving in slow, relaxed waves. The monitoring equipment showed something impossible. The cubs' heart rates had slowed. Their stress hormones had dropped. They were calm. "This should not be possible," Yuna whispered, staring at the data. "There is no scientific reason for this." But then Ji-Wan, a human linguist who worked on the station, spoke up. "Maybe we should try another human." There were only 12 humans on Station Nexus 7. They called one who was nearby, a man named Hyun-Soo who worked as an engineer. He had never seen the cubs before. Hyun-Soo approached the habitat nervously. The cubs watched him. They did not come as close as they did with Daewon, but they did not scream either. They stayed calm. "Curious even. It is all humans," someone said. They respond positively to humans, but that opened more questions than it answered. Why humans? The cubs had never met a human before. Their planet was thousands of light years from Earth. There had never been any contact between the 2 species. So why did these alien cubs trust humans when they trusted no one else in the galaxy? Yuna spent the rest of the day searching through databases. She pulled up old survey records from the Velkran homeworld. She compared genetic data. She analyzed behavior patterns. That evening, she called Daewon to her office. Ji-Wan was already there, sitting at a desk covered in papers and data screens. "Look at this," Yuna said, projecting an image on the wall. It showed a Velkran cub in a hunting crouch. "Now look at this," another image appeared. This one showed an Earth cat in the exact same position. "They look similar," Daewon agreed. "Not similar. Identical." Yuna switched images rapidly. Cubs playing. Cats playing. Cubs sleeping. Cat sleeping. Cubs stalking. Cat stalking. The behavior patterns match exactly. The body language. The ear positions. The tail signals. Everything. Convergent evolution, Ji-Wan suggested. Similar environments create similar solutions. Perhaps, Yuna said, but she did not sound convinced. The Velkran homeworld had similar gravity to Earth, similar atmosphere, similar day-night cycles. The Velkran evolved as ambush predators in forested environments, just like Earth cats. Daewon thought about the cubs, about how they moved, how they held themselves. It was true. They were so much like the cats he had grown up with. The same careful watching, the same need for space and patience, but this precise? Yuna continued. Across thousands of light years? It feels like more than coincidence. They worked late into the night comparing data. The more they looked, the stranger it became. It was not just behavior. The cubs' sleep patterns matched Earth felines. Their hunting instincts matched. Even the sounds they made were similar. Finally, exhausted, Daewon returned to the cubs' habitat. It had become his routine now. Standing watch, keeping them calm. The smallest cub was waiting. It chirped when it saw him. Then it did something new. It reached up and touched the glass with one paw, as if trying to touch him through the barrier. Daewon pressed his hand against the glass on his side. The cub pressed back as close as it could get. In that moment, something felt ancient, familiar, like a memory from a dream he could not quite remember. The cubs were frightened of everyone except the human, and Daewon was beginning to suspect there was a reason for that, a reason that went back much, much further than anyone could imagine. The morning started with an alert that pulled Daewon from sleep. Not an emergency, just a message. Someone wanted to meet him. Her name was Soo-Jin. She was old by human standards, maybe 70 or 80 years. She had gray hair pulled back neatly and eyes that sparkled with sharp intelligence. She worked as an archaeologist on the station, studying ancient ruins and dead civilizations. "I heard about your cubs," she said when Daewon met her in the cafeteria, "and I think I know something that might help." She pulled up images on her datapad. Strange structures. Geometric patterns carved into stone, symbols that looked almost like writing but not quite. "These are ruins found on 12 different worlds," Sujin explained. "Different sectors, different environments, but the ruins are identical. Same building style, same symbols, same technology signatures. Who built them?" Daewon asked. "No one knows. They are millions of years old. Most scientists think they were built by some ancient species that traveled the galaxy before disappearing. We call them the first travelers." Sujin zoomed in on one of the symbols. "What interests me is this. It appears on every site. Some researchers think it is a genetic marker, a signature left behind in DNA. Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Sujin said carefully, "2 of the 12 sites with these ruins were found in your solar system. One on Mars, one on Europa, and one of them was found in orbit around the Velkrin homeworld before it collapsed." Daewon felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You think Earth and the Velkrin homeworld are connected?" "I think something connected them millions of years ago. Something that left markers behind. Genetic templates. Seeds of life that would grow and evolve." Before Daewon could respond, another figure approached their table. This one was different from any alien Daewon had seen on the station. Smaller, thinner, with the same silver-gray fur as the cubs. "You are the human," the figure said. His voice was rough, like he had been crying recently. "You are the one who calms the children. I am Taeyang," he continued. "I am Velkrin, one of the few who survived." Daewon stood and offered his hand, then realized that might not be appropriate. But Taeyang reached out and touched his hand gently with his paw. It was warm and soft. "I came as soon as I heard they were here," Taeyang said. "I traveled for weeks. I thought I would be too late, that they would already be dead." His voice cracked. "But you saved them. You kept them calm. I do not understand how, but thank you." "Can I see them?" Taeyang asked. "Please. They are the last children of my world." They walked together to the habitat. Daewon worried about how the cubs would react to Taeyang. He was Velkrin, yes, but still a stranger, and the cubs had been afraid of everyone. But when Taeyang stepped into view, something unexpected happened. The cubs' ears shot up. They stared. Then the smallest one made a sound that Daewon had never heard before. Long and musical and sad. Taeyang dropped to his knees, pressing against the glass. "They remember," he whispered. "They remember the home song." He began to sing. It was not like human singing. It was deeper, with sounds that came from his chest. The cubs listened, their eyes wide. They did not come close, still too scared. But they listened. When the song ended, Taeyang wiped his eyes. "That is the song our mothers sang to their cubs. The song that has been passed down for generations. I did not think I would ever hear a cub respond to it again." "Taeyang," Sujin said gently, "did your people have any legends? Any old stories about other species?" Taeyang thought for a moment. "There were tales. Ancient ones. My grandmother told them to me when I was young. Stories of the Guardians." "Guardians?" "The legend said that long ago, before our people built cities, there were other beings who walked our world. They were not Velkrin, but they understood us. They moved through the forests without disturbing the balance. They could calm the wild-born cubs. They protected the weak." Taeyang looked at Daewon. "The story said they were bipedal, soft-voiced, patient, with eyes that saw without threatening. The description matched humans perfectly. Did the legend say where these guardians came from?" Sujin asked, leaning forward. "The stars. They always came from the stars and eventually returned to them. My people thought they were spirits. Myths to teach children to be kind." Taeyang's voice was barely a whisper. "But what if they were real? What if they were you?" That afternoon, Yuna called an emergency meeting. Everyone involved in studying the cubs gathered in the conference room. Daewon, Jiwon, Sujin, Taeyang, Hana, Bora, and several others. Yuna presented her findings. The behavioral similarities, the genetic parallels, the ancient ruins, Taeyang's legends. Piece by piece, an impossible picture formed. "My hypothesis," Yuna said, "is that millions of years ago, the first travelers seeded compatible DNA across habitable worlds. Most experiments failed, but some succeeded. Humans and Velcrin are two branches from the same ancient genetic template. Different paths, different environments, but the same foundation. That is why the cubs recognize Day One, G1 added. Not consciously, but at a deep genetic level. We smell right. We sound right. We feel right to them. Because we are kin, the room went quiet. The idea was enormous. If true, humanity was not just another random species. They were part of something ancient, something planned. If this becomes known, Hana said carefully, humans will be in danger. Species across the galaxy will want to study you, use you, control you. The ability to connect with other species would make you incredibly valuable. As if responding to her warning, station alarms began to sound softly, not emergency alarms. Just alerts. Taemin entered the room quickly. We detected something. 3 days ago, a ship appeared at the edge of our system for exactly 3 seconds, then vanished. The technology does not match any known species. What kind of ship? Hana asked. We do not know, but the energy signature was recorded. And today I found a match in our databases. Taemin projected an image. It matches signatures found at illegal trade stations. The ship belongs to harvesters. Harvesters? Daewon asked. Smugglers, collectors. They capture rare species and sell them to private buyers. If they know about the cub, Taemin did not need to finish. They know, Hana said, and they are coming. That night, Daewon received special permission to enter the habitat for the first time. Not just observe through glass, but actually go inside. Taeyang came with him. They moved slowly, carefully. The cubs watched them approach. Then as Daewon sat down on the soft floor, the smallest cub did something incredible. It walked directly to him, climbed into his lap, circled once, and settled down, curling into a ball against his stomach. The cub was warm. Its fur was softer than anything Daewon had felt, and it was purring, actually purring just like a cat from Earth. Taeyang sat nearby, watching with tears streaming down his face. The other 2 cubs eventually approached him. Not as close as they went to Daewon, but close enough. They feel safe, Taeyang whispered. For the first time since our world died, they feel safe. Daewon stroked the cub's soft fur. Its purring grew louder. In that moment, surrounded by impossible connections and ancient mysteries, only one thing felt certain. These cubs would not die. Not while he could prevent it. Not while there was still breath in his body to stand between them and danger. 3 days after the mysterious ship was detected, a new vessel arrived at Station Nexus 7. This one did not hide. It docked properly, announced itself, and requested an official meeting. The ship belonged to the Korath Dominion. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They lived for thousands of years and kept records of everything. Most species respected them. Some feared them, but no one ignored them when they came calling. Their ambassador was named Lyra. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and gold. Her eyes were ancient and knowing. When she looked at someone, it felt like she could see through time itself. Hana met with her first, as protocol demanded. Then Lyra asked to meet with the human who tends the Velcrin young. Daewon sat in Hana's office, feeling very small. Lyra studied him with those timeless eyes, and he tried not to fidget. You are not what I expected, Lyra said finally. I thought you would be more impressive. I am just a xenobiologist, Daewon replied. No, you are much more than that. You just do not know it yet. Lyra turned to address everyone in the room. Hana, Yuna, Jiwon, Taeyang, and Taimin were all present. The Korath have been watching this situation with great interest, Lyra said. You are not the first to discover this connection between species. We have documented similar cases across the galaxy for centuries. We call it the echo. The echo, Yuna asked, a resonance, a recognition between species that should have no connection. It happens rarely, but when it does, it always involves humans. Lyra pulled up holographic images, dozens of them. Humans interacting with different alien species. Here, a human child calms a Dranathi swarm queen. Here, a human doctor helps a Korthan warrior overcome deep trauma. Here, a human artist communicates with a species that has no words. The images continued. Case after case of humans connecting with aliens in ways that should not be possible. We do not fully understand it, Lyra admitted. But our theory is this. Millions of years ago, the first travelers seeded life across the galaxy. They created genetic templates that would grow and adapt to different environments. Most failed. but some succeeded. Humans are the result of one successful template. And scattered across the galaxy are other species born from similar templates. We are related, Taiyang said softly, across impossible distances. Through millions of years. But we are kin. Yes, Lyra confirmed. The echo is your genetic memory recognizing itself. That is why the cubs trust you, Daewon. That is why humans can connect with certain species while others cannot. You share a foundation. But, Lyra's voice turned serious, this knowledge is dangerous. If it becomes widely known that humans have this ability, you will become targets. Already, the harvesters have learned of the cubs. They know a human can calm them. They will want both, Tamian stepped forward. We have increased security. They cannot take the cubs or Daewon without facing serious consequences. Lyra looked at him with something like pity. The harvesters do not attack stations openly. They are patient. They have other methods. As if her words had summoned it, an alert came through on Hana's communication device. She read it and her face went rigid. They have filed a legal claim, she said. The harvesters are saying they purchased the cubs legally during the Velcrin evacuation. They have documents, signatures, a council warrant. That is impossible, Taiyang said, his voice rising. Our government would never sell the last cubs. Your government was collapsing, Lyra said gently. In chaos, anything can be bought. And the harvesters are very good at finding corrupt officials. Hana read more. They are giving us 12 hours to turn over the cubs voluntarily. After that, they will come with council enforcers and take them by force. The room erupted in arguments. Taemin wanted to fight. Yuna wanted to appeal to the council. Taeyang was ready to take the cubs and run, but Hana raised her hands for silence. We have 3 options, she said. Keep the cubs here and risk the harvesters attacking. Transport them to a secure facility and risk them dying from stress during travel. Or disappear. Take them somewhere the harvesters cannot find them. I will go, Daewon said immediately. If they need me to keep the cubs calm, I will take them and disappear. Ji-won stood. I will go with you. Minho, a human pilot who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. My ship is small, but it is fast. And I know routes that are not on any official maps, but Yuna shook her head. If you run, they will chase you forever. You will spend your entire lives hiding. Then what do you suggest? Daewon asked. We fight, but not with weapons. With information. Yuna's eyes gleamed. We make this public. We broadcast to the entire galaxy. We show them what the cubs represent. We make them so important, so valuable to science and history, that the council cannot let anyone take them. We make the galaxy care. Lyra listened to this plan and slowly nodded. It is risky. If you reveal the echo publicly, you expose all of humanity to danger. But if you succeed, you protect not just these cubs, but potentially many other species. Then we do it, Daewon said. We broadcast everything. The connection. The behavior. The ancient genetic link. All of it. They spent the next 6 hours preparing. News feeds were contacted. Ambassadors were invited. The station's main conference hall was set up with cameras and recording equipment. Representatives from dozens of worlds agreed to attend, curious about what could be so important. But as the preparations continued, something strange began happening. The cubs started acting different. They became agitated, pacing. The smallest one kept going to the habitat's viewport, staring out at the stars, making sounds that the monitoring equipment could not classify. Taeyang listened and his face went pale. That is a calling song. Cubs only make that sound when they are searching for their parents. But their parents are dead, Bora said. I know, Taeyang replied. So what are they calling for? Deep in the station's sensor array, alerts began pinging. Something was approaching the system. Not the harvester ship. Something else. Something much, much larger. Taemin checked the readings and immediately called Hana. You need to see this. On the main screen, an image appeared. Space itself seemed to be tearing open. Not a normal jump. Not any technology anyone recognized. The readings were off the charts, and then a ship emerged. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Its design was like nothing in any database. Elegant curves. Organic-looking patterns. Technology that seemed to blend with art. The ship was sending a signal, broadcasting in a language that was dead, ancient, predating most known civilizations. Lyra's face showed an emotion no one had seen, before shock, maybe even fear. That His first traveler technology, she whispered. But it should be inactive, dead. Those ruins are millions of years old. The signal continued broadcasting. Yuna ran it through translation matrices. It took several minutes, but finally words appeared on the screen. Simple words that changed everything. Return our children. The first travelers were not extinct. They had not vanished. They had simply left, and now they were coming back. The cubs were not calling for their parents. They were calling for something older, something that their genetic memory recognized even if they did not understand it. They were calling for the Guardians, and the Guardians had answered. The station fell silent. Everyone stared at the massive ship on their screens. After millions of years, the first travelers had returned, and they wanted the cubs. The harvester ship that had been waiting in the outer system suddenly changed course. It jumped away without a word. Legal documents and threats meant nothing in the face of beings that predated galactic civilization. A new message came from the first traveler ship. This time in modern galactic standard language. Their translation systems had adapted quickly. We are the Cedars. Long ago we walked many worlds. We planted the patterns of life and left them to grow. We departed to explore beyond what you call the galaxy. Now we return to check on our gardens. Your species are our children, grown wild and beautiful in our absence. Lyra spoke carefully into the communication system. Why do you want the Velcrin cubs? They are hurt, alone, afraid. We feel their distress call across the void. We come to offer them sanctuary. What kind of sanctuary? Hana asked. Images came through. A world, green and blue and beautiful, forests and plains and mountains. And in those images, creatures. Dozens of different species all living together in what looked like a vast garden. Some looked like the Velcrin cubs. Some looked similar to Earth animals. Others were completely unique. We have worlds set aside for those who need them, the Cedar ship explained. Places where species that were hurt, that lost their homes, can live in peace. The cubs will have others like them there. They will have space to grow, to heal, to become what they were meant to be. Taeyang pressed against the communication console. If they go, my species ends. These are the last. Our genetics, our culture, everything we were. If they disappear into your sanctuary, Velcrin will be gone from the galaxy. The Cedars were quiet for a moment. Then they responded with something unexpected. You can come with them. What? Taeyang whispered. We do not steal children from their families. If you wish to preserve your culture, your teachings, come with the cubs. Help build a new home. Not a replacement for what you lost, but a beginning for what you might become. Yuna stepped forward. What about humans? You said we are part of your pattern too. Yes. Humanity carries one of our most successful templates. You have developed compassion across species barriers, empathy for those different from yourselves. That is what we hoped for when we planted the seeds. That is why the cubs trust you. You tested us, Daewon said, suddenly understanding. The cubs were a test. No, the cubs were cubs. Scared and alone, but your response to them shows us what humanity has become. Many species would have given up on creatures that could not be saved with normal methods. But you tried. You sat with them. You gave them patience and kindness even when it was not easy. The planned broadcast was forgotten. Instead, the entire galaxy watched a different conversation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds listened as the Cedars explained their purpose. They were not conquerors, not gods. Just gardeners who had planted seeds long ago and returned to see what had grown. We offer humanity the same choice we offer Taeyang, the Cedars said. Some of you can come to the sanctuary world, not to leave your species behind, but to build a bridge. To help species like the Velcrin cubs, to be what you are best at being. Caretakers, guardians, friends to those who need friendship. Daewon looked at the cubs through the habitat glass. They were calm now. The smallest one sat closest, watching him with those bright eyes. It had come so far in just a few weeks, from terrified and dying to playful and curious. But it still needed more. It needed space, freedom, others of its kind. I will go, Daewon said. If the cubs go, I go with them. Jiwon stepped beside him. Me too. Someone needs to document this scientifically. Bora surprised everyone by volunteering. I am a veterinarian. If you are building a sanctuary for hurt species, you need medical staff. Taeyang was crying openly now. I thought my people were finished. I thought I would be the last Velcrin to die alone. But now you have a chance, Lyra said gently. Not to restore what was lost, but to build something new. Minho grinned. Someone needs to run supplies between the sanctuary and the station. Might as well be me. Over the next few hours, plans formed. The Cedars would not take the cubs immediately. First, they would establish a proper embassy, a communication link. The sanctuary world would not be a prison or a hiding place. It would be connected to the galaxy, just protected from exploitation. Humans and Velcrin would work together to build a habitat, to establish routines, to create a space where scared creatures could heal. And it would start with 3 cubs and 1 patient human, who had simply known how to sit quietly and wait. The council meeting that had been planned to vote on euthanasia became a celebration instead. The Harvester legal claim was withdrawn. The galaxy now knew about the Echo, about the ancient connections between species. Humanity was not in danger from this knowledge. Instead, they were valued, protected because the Cedars had made it clear. Humanity was one of their success stories, and they would not allow their children to be harmed. 2 months later, Day-Wan stood on the sanctuary world. The air smelled like earth forests mixed with something alien and sweet. The sky was a shade of blue he had never seen before, and in the distance he could hear the cubs playing. They were bigger now, healthier. The smallest one still spent most of its time near Day-Wan, but it was learning to be independent, to explore, to be young in the way cubs were meant to be. Taiyang was teaching them the old songs, the history of the Velcrin people. They would not forget where they came from, but they would also not be trapped by it. Jiwan had set up a full research station. She was documenting everything. The echo, the behavioral connections, the way different species interacted. It was the most important work of her life. Bora ran a medical facility that treated creatures from a dozen different worlds, species that had been hurt or displaced. She had never been happier, and Minho kept his promise. Once a month his ship arrived with supplies, news, and messages from the station. The sanctuary was not cut off. It was part of the galaxy, just protected. One evening, as the sanctuary's sun set in colors that had no names, the smallest cub brought Day-Wan something. A flower. It smelled faintly like honeysuckle from Earth. The cub had carried it carefully in its mouth the way cats carry prey. Day-Wan accepted the gift. The cub purred and rubbed against his leg, then bounded away to join its siblings. They were racing through the grass now, playing chase in the fading light. The Cedars' ship remained in orbit, silent, watching. They had said they would stay for a while, making sure everything was established properly. Then they would leave again, traveling to other distant places. But they would return in time to check on their gardens. Day-Wan sat in the soft grass and watched the cubs play. He thought about how strange life was. A few months ago he had been simply a xenobiologist on Earth. Now he was here, on an ancient sanctuary world, guardian to the last cubs of a dying species, part of something vast and old and important. The cubs were frightened of everyone except the human. People had asked why. Scientists had studied it. Theories had been proposed. But Day-Wan knew the real answer was simpler than anyone had imagined. The cubs recognized kindness. They recognized patience. They recognized someone who saw them not as problems to solve or specimens to study, but as children who needed care. That was all it had ever been. That was all it needed to be. In the growing darkness, the smallest cub stopped playing and looked back at Day-Wan. Its eyes glowed softly. It chirped once, a sound that meant safety, home, family. Day-Wan chirped back, a soft approximation that made the cub's ears perk up happily. Then it returned to its siblings, and they played until the stars came out. And across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, other humans heard the story. They heard about the echo, about the ancient connections, about what it meant to be guardians. Some would come to the sanctuary. Others would stay on their own worlds, working to protect and care for creatures that needed protection and care, because that was what humans did best. That was what they had always done. And now, finally, the galaxy understood why. The cubs were no longer frightened, and that was all that mattered.